The Grand Hall of the Galaxy Council was vast and shining. Its walls were built from crystal that caught the light of a dozen suns. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the tiers of seats, their voices mixing into a storm of pride and arrogance. To them, this chamber was the center of the galaxy. It was the place where decisions shaped entire civilizations. Humans were still new here. Their presence was small compared to the old species, but it was already unsettling for the Council. Humanity had risen too quickly, developing technology faster than most could understand. The other races had expected Earth to beg for guidance, to crawl before the ancient powers. Instead, humans walked into the council chamber as equals, heads high, eyes sharp. That alone was seen as arrogance by many. On this day, the human delegation arrived in silence. The diplomats wore dark suits, their faces unreadable. Behind them walked a young girl, no older than 7. She was the daughter of the lead human ambassador. To her father, she was simply a child curious about the wonders of the stars. To the aliens watching, she was an insult. A child in the sacred chamber? A primitive offspring walking on floors meant only for rulers? Murmurs spread through the rows of alien officials. The girl was innocent. She wandered a little, staring up at the glowing banners of alien nations, touching the smooth stone of the council floor. Her laughter was soft, almost lost under the low roar of voices, but some eyes watched her with disgust. To them, she was not a child. She was a symbol of humans not knowing their place. One alien counselor hissed to another, "They bring a child here as if this hall is a playground. They mock us." Another replied coldly, "Then let them pay for the insult." At the center of the chamber, where guards stood in ornate armor, one of them stepped forward. His species was tall and reptilian, with scales the color of steel. His orders were never spoken, but in his mind, it was clear. Discipline the humans, remind them of their place. The girl, unaware, walked near the central platform. She looked at the shining crest of the council carved into the floor and smiled. She tried to trace the lines with her finger. The guard moved fast. With one strike of his weapon, sharp and merciless, he struck the child down. The sound echoed across the chamber. Her small body fell to the ground, lifeless, her blood marking the sacred crest. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then whispers began, cruel and mocking. Some aliens laughed quietly, finding humor in the act. Others smirked, convinced this would put humans back into their place. But the humans did not react the way the council expected. The ambassador did not scream. He did not rush to his daughter's body. His face turned pale, his jaw tight. With slow, careful movements, he lifted his daughter into his arms. Her head rested against his chest, her eyes closed forever. The other human diplomats stood in perfect silence. Their eyes burned with something deeper than grief. It was not sorrow alone. It was not even anger. It was the cold promise of something far worse. Without a single word, the humans turned and walked out of the chamber. Their footsteps were steady, unshaken, echoing like drums of war. The aliens watched with amusement. To them, the silence meant weakness. They expected humans to beg for justice, to cry out for punishment of the guard, to demand forgiveness from the council. Instead, there was nothing. Only quiet departure. One alien laughed loudly. "Look at them. They cannot even speak. Their hearts are too weak for this galaxy." Another nodded. "It is good. They will learn fear. They will bow like the rest." But deep inside, a few of the wiser counselors shifted uncomfortably. They saw what the others did not. They saw the stillness in human eyes, the silence that was not submission but restraint. They had heard whispers of Earth's wars, of how humans had once burned their own skies yet survived. The child's body was gone from the chamber, but her presence remained like a shadow. The humans had left nothing behind, not even a word, and that silence was worse than any scream. In the following days, the alien counselors continued with their pride, laughing at the humans who had walked away. They did not know that on Earth, Billions had already seen the child's death broadcast through secret channels. They did not know that the silence was not weakness but the deep breath before the storm. Because when humans do not speak, when they do not cry, when they do not scream, it is because they have already decided. And once humanity decides, there is no turning back. The funeral was held under the skies of Earth. Billions watched the broadcast, not only on the planet but across colonies and orbital stations. The small coffin was draped with the flag of Earth, white flowers placed carefully around it. There was no music, no long speeches, only silence. The same silence that had followed the moment she was killed. The ambassador stood beside the coffin. His face was lined with grief, but his voice was steady when he spoke. They thought they could kill a child and laugh. They thought they could mock us and we would beg them for justice. They were wrong. This child was not only my daughter, she was the daughter of Earth. And Earth does not forget. Every word was carried through the networks, reaching deep into every settlement, every city, every family. People listened, their jaws set, their hearts heavy with rage. On mining colonies, workers stopped their drills. In orbital shipyards, engineers stood frozen, fists clenched. On farms and in cities, children and old men alike watched the screen. For once, humanity was united in one single burning emotion. That evening, the Earth Council of Nations was called into emergency session. Leaders from every nation, every colony, and every orbital spoke. Normally, these meetings were long, filled with arguments and compromises. But not this time. This time, there was no debate. The vote was swift, unanimous, and absolute. The President of Earth stood at the center of the chamber, her voice cold as stone. We offered peace. We offered friendship. They murdered a child. There will be no negotiations, no treaties, no forgiveness. From this day forward, humanity is at war with the Galaxy Council. A message was prepared to be sent to the Council's core network. It was not long, not filled with words of explanation. Humanity had no need to explain. The message contained only one word: die. When the signal was launched, it crossed the stars like a knife. Council systems received it almost instantly. At first, they were confused. Is this a threat? They asked one another. Some laughed. One word? This is the best they can do? But others felt the coldness inside that message. It was not a warning. It was a sentence. Back on Earth, the factories roared to life. Shipyards lit up as machines worked day and night. Satellites were repositioned. Hidden fleets, built in silence over the years, activated and began to move. Engineers brought out designs that had been kept in shadows, weapons the galaxy had never seen. Soldiers gathered in their thousands. Veterans who had once sworn to retire put their uniforms back on. Young men and women, their faces hard with purpose, volunteered in masses. No one needed to be forced. The death of one child had called them all. Across the colonies, banners rose. Ships waiting in dry dock were launched ahead of schedule. Old war machines were brought back, upgraded, prepared. The sound of engines filled the skies above Earth, black silhouettes of warships stretching across the horizon. In hidden bunkers, generals and admirals sat around glowing maps of the galaxy. They spoke in calm voices, assigning fleets, drawing routes, targeting supply chains. Their hands did not shake. Their decisions were clear. Humanity was not rushing into rage. Humanity was planning with cold precision. The child's name was written across war orders, carved onto ship hulls, whispered in the barracks of soldiers. She had become more than one person. She had become the reason. In the Galaxy Council, alien leaders joked about the human message. They dismissed it, mocking the simplicity of one word. They did not know that the factories had already shifted, that fleets were already in motion, that humanity had already decided, and in the heart of Earth, under the stars that had once been. Thought unreachable, the president looked out at the sky. Her eyes were calm, her voice barely more than a whisper. They took one child from us, we will take everything from them. The silence of Earth was over. The storm was beginning. The first reports reached the Galaxy Council weeks later. At first, they dismissed them as rumors. A minor outpost near the human border had gone silent. Communications had failed. Sensors showed nothing. The council believed it was a technical fault. But then, another world went dark. And then another. Entire colonies that once sent daily signals were silent. Their skies empty. Their stations burned. Council warships were dispatched, but none returned. Their last transmissions were broken screams, cut off by static. Whispers spread among the member races. Some spoke of invisible fleets moving through the stars. Others claimed humans had found a way to strike faster than light itself. The arrogant dismissed it all. Impossible, they said. Humans are still children compared to us. But the evidence grew impossible to ignore. On the planet Dreshka, home to a major council supply depot, the humans struck openly for the first time. Thousands of alien soldiers stood guard over weapon stockpiles, ships in dockyards, and fuel silos. It was one of the most secure bases in the region. No enemy had ever breached it. The attack came in silence. Human ships appeared above the planet, their hulls black and sharp like blades of night. They moved without warning, without broadcast. Their weapons flared, tearing through shields as if they were paper. The council defenders scrambled, but their formations broke almost instantly. Every command they had trained for, every strategy they relied upon, failed. On the ground, human dropships landed with brutal precision. Soldiers in dark armor spilled out, moving fast and striking hard. They carried weapons the aliens had never seen, rifles that burned through walls, explosives that cut through armored beasts. They advanced like a tide, unshaken, unstoppable. The council commander on Dreshka sent one last message. They are not fighting like the others. They do not take ground and stop. They do not slow. They come like they are ending us. Then his signal ended. The humans did not stay to occupy the world. They burned the fuel depots, destroyed the dockyards, and left nothing but ash and silence. When alien reinforcements arrived days later, all they found were ruins and the carved words on the wreckage, "For the child." Across the frontier, more systems fell. Human fleets dismantled communication networks, cutting council worlds from each other. Trade routes collapsed. Starships carrying supplies were hunted and erased in the dark. The council tried to gather fleets to push back, but every time they moved, humans struck somewhere else, tearing at their weakness. Fear spread faster than the war itself. In marketplaces on distant worlds, merchants whispered of human ships appearing from shadows. In military barracks, soldiers spoke in hushed tones of the human silence, of how they never broadcast demands, never asked for surrender. They came, they struck, they left nothing behind. Council leaders grew desperate. They sent spies to study human technology, but the few who returned brought only terror. They build weapons faster than we can. Their machines think faster than ours. Their soldiers fight like they have nothing to lose. Inside the council chambers, arguments broke out. Some demanded immediate negotiations. Others refused, insisting humans could still be crushed if the full armada was assembled. But beneath their words was fear. For the first time in centuries, the great powers of the galaxy realized they were facing an enemy who would not bow, who would not stop. On Earth, the people watched the reports in silence. There was no celebration, no cheering. Every victory was another step in a war they had not wanted, but now could not escape. Factories still roared, fleets still launched, soldiers still trained. Humanity was not striking for glory. They were striking for judgment. And across the stars, the message that had been sent to the council repeated itself in every burning world, every destroyed fleet. Every word carved into wreckage: die. The Galaxy Council had never known fear in its halls. For centuries, its members had sat above the stars, dictating law to every race under their rule. They believed themselves untouchable, protected by the largest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. But when the humans came, even the heart of the council began to tremble. Every surviving fleet was called to defend the core. Thousands of ships of every shape and size gathered, forming a wall of steel and fire around the council's capital world. It was the greatest armada the galaxy had seen in living memory. Generals spoke boldly, claiming no enemy could break such defenses. Yet behind their words, their eyes betrayed doubt. Then the humans arrived. The first warning came from the outer sensors. A dozen ships appeared at the edge of the system, then vanished. Moments later, hundreds of human vessels emerged from the shadows, black hulls reflecting no light. They moved in coordinated silence, no hails, no warnings. They came like executioners. The Council Armada surged forward, firing everything at once. Beams of light and storms of missiles lit the void. For a moment it seemed the humans would be drowned in fire, but they did not falter. Their formation split with machine-like precision, weaving through the barrage. Their weapons roared, tearing through Council ships with terrifying accuracy. Alien commanders screamed orders, but their fleets broke apart under the weight of human strategy. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds, their wreckage scattering across the black. Ships that had once been symbols of power were cut down like prey. The humans pressed forward, ship by ship, line by line. Their flagship, a massive vessel forged in secret shipyards, led the assault. Its name was painted in bright letters across its hull, the same name as the murdered child. Every human pilot, every soldier knew it. That name had become their rallying cry. On the ground, the Council world watched in terror. Cities shook as the battle raged in orbit, the sky filled with fire. Civilians fled into bunkers, whispers spreading like wildfire. The humans are here. The humans have come. At the Central Defense Command, alien leaders panicked. They cannot be allowed to land. Stop them! But their orders came too late. Human dropships pierced the atmosphere, sleek and black, faster than the defenders could track. They fell like meteors scattering across the surface. When the hatches opened, human soldiers poured out. Their boots hit the soil with purpose. They did not stop to plant banners. They advanced like shadows, clearing defenses with merciless speed. Every stronghold, every fortress fell one after another. The Council sent its finest warriors, but the humans fought with something greater than training or numbers. They fought with resolve sharpened by loss. Every shot, every strike, every breath carried the weight of one child's death. In orbit, the last of the Council's fleets broke. Alien commanders screamed for retreat, but there was nowhere left to run. The humans had closed the trap surrounding the system. The Council's proud armada became wreckage, drifting in silence. For the first time in history, the halls of the Galaxy Council shook under enemy boots. Human forces marched toward the Great Chamber, step by step, while the surviving counselors huddled in fear. The aliens had laughed when the child was killed. They had mocked the silence of Earth. But now, as the thunder of human soldiers drew closer, the Council finally understood. The silence had never been weakness. It had been the promise of judgment. The chamber of the Galaxy Council had once been the most sacred place in the galaxy. Its walls were built of crystal and steel, towering high, filled with banners of countless empires. Here, the most powerful voices had passed laws, condemned species, and shaped entire civilizations. Now those same voices were trembling. The doors to the chamber burst open with a thunder that echoed across the hall. Human soldiers marched in, their armor dark and unyielding, their rifles held steady. They moved without hesitation, their boots striking the floor in unison, like the beating of a war drum. The banners of alien empires fluttered in the artificial wind, but none dared to move or raise a weapon. At the head of the formation walked a human general. His face was carved with grief, his eyes cold, but his voice carried the weight of finality. He walked to the very center of the chamber, the same crest where a child's blood had been spilled. For a moment he stood still, staring down at the mark where the Council's arrogance had ended an innocent life. Around him, alien counselors begged. Some shouted promises of surrender, others cried for mercy. "We can make peace," one wailed. "We can give you anything you want." Another fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "It was not all of us, it was only a few. Spare us." The general did not raise his weapon. He raised only his voice. "When your guard struck down a child, you did not stop him. You did not speak. You laughed." His words hung heavy in the air, sinking into every corner of the chamber. He pointed at the counselors one by one. "This is not the judgment of one man. This is not the vengeance of one family. This is the will of Earth. For the blood of one child you will all fall." The signal was given. Human soldiers moved like executioners. Each counselor, each leader who had ruled with arrogance was struck down. Their pleas were drowned by the sound of gunfire and the silence that followed. No mercy was shown. The chamber that had once been a symbol of power became a place of reckoning. Some aliens tried to run, but none escaped. Others tried to fight, but their resistance was crushed in seconds. The soldiers showed no rage, no cruelty, only precision. They were not killing in madness. They were delivering judgment. As the last counselor fell, silence returned to the chamber. The general lowered his rifle and looked again at the crest where the child had died. Slowly, he reached into his armor and drew a small object, a locket. He placed it on the floor, directly above the stain that no time could erase. "This," he said quietly, "is justice." Outside, across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The council was gone. The ruling empires that had once believed themselves eternal were leaderless, broken and terrified. On countless worlds, survivors whispered the same words. The humans do not forgive. The humans do not forget. What had started with one child's death had ended in the collapse of an empire. And every alien who heard the story understood the new law of the stars: never harm the children of Earth. The galaxy was quiet. Where once the council's voice had ruled, there was now only silence and ruins. Fleets that had once stretched across the stars were gone, burned to drifting wrecks. Worlds that had raised banners of power now bowed their heads, their skies darkened by the shadow of human ships. On Earth there was no celebration. The war had not been a victory to cheer, but a duty carried out. Cities did not erupt in parades. Instead, candles burned in windows, lights glowing for the child who had been lost, and for the countless lives taken since. Humanity had done what it swore it would do. Nothing more, nothing less. The president of Earth spoke to the galaxy, her voice carried through every channel, every relay, every world that still listened. She stood with no soldiers at her side, no banners behind her, only the image of the Earth itself rising over a silent horizon. "We asked for peace. We asked for respect. We were given blood instead. You murdered a child and we answered. Let all who hear this remember, Earth does not strike first. But if you draw blood from us, if you harm even one innocent, then we will end you. This is not a threat. This is truth." Her words echoed across alien worlds where survivors cowered in silence. No one doubted her. They had seen the ruins, the fleets erased, the council destroyed. Humanity had shown not just strength, but resolve that no empire could match. In the great chamber where the council had once ruled, the banners of alien empires were gone. Instead, one single flag stood at the center, the flag of Earth. Beneath it, carved deep into the floor where the child had fallen, was her name. It was written in human script and alien glyphs alike, a permanent reminder of why this war had been fought. The galaxy began to reshape itself under human eyes. Some species offered surrender, swearing loyalty to Earth. Others stayed silent, too fearful to even speak. No one dared test humanity again. For the first time in living memory, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. And on Earth, in the quiet after war, families looked to the sky, not with fear, but with certainty. They knew the galaxy would never see them as weak again. They knew their children could walk under alien suns without threat. Because now the message had been carved into history, a single message, a single word: die. It had been sent in fury, answered with fire, and fulfilled with judgment. Now it remained as warning. Do not touch Earth's children. The stars were quieter now, but the silence did not bring peace. It pressed on people like a weight. On Earth and its colonies, nations fixed their wounds and counted their losses. The cost of victory was written, in graves and in the faces of those who had given everything. Children grew up beneath the shadow of a war they had not wanted, taught the story of a single girl who became a warning across the galaxy. At first, the world followed plans made in bunkers and councils. Trade routes reopened under heavy escort. Former enemy worlds sent delegations to offer their submission or to beg for terms. Some leaders chose to kneel openly, bringing gifts and engineers to patch the broken systems. Others folded inward, hiding from the new order humanity had created. Where there was fear, there was a strange sort of order. But order was only the first layer. Beneath it, people argued in quiet rooms and over static channels. Some said Earth had done what it had to do. The council had shown its face, and the galaxy needed a clear law. Others whispered that humanity had become what it hated: judges with no jury, executioners without a trial. Old activists, once silenced, found their voices again and asked sharp questions. Did killing every leader in a single chamber make the galaxy safer, or did it teach new empires to hide and to strike from the shadows? The military kept its edge. Fleet commanders, hailed as saviors, found their days filled with diplomacy as much as strategy. They rebuilt systems to carry food and medicine as readily as weapons. Engineers were ordered to convert shipyards to hospitals and farms, to prove the word protection meant more than power. Still, some shipyards kept secret designs locked away, backups that only a few trusted officers could access. Colonies far from Earth reacted differently. On mining worlds, hardened by life and danger, people thanked Earth for removing a threat that had once bled their children. On cultured worlds, where art and law mattered more than iron and engines, scholars debated ethics in crowded amphitheaters. Entire universities opened new chairs in interstellar justice, studying whether a single straightforward message had been law or malice. Those who had served in the campaign returned changed. Veterans walked through their cities like ghosts. Many could not speak of what they had done without a hard edge rising in their voice. Others found small practices to remember the child: songs, days of silence, stones placed by the sea. The flag-painted hulls of the ships that had fought were retired or turned into museums, so people could learn without glamorizing the blood. In some places, a small and sharp resistance grew. It was not made of aliens now, but humans who feared the cost of absolute power. They called themselves the Echoes, and they argued that no race, no matter how small, should have the right to end leaders without a hearing. They staged quiet protests, leaked documents, and demanded a council not of conquerors, but of many voices. The government called them dangerous. The Echoes called themselves guardians of the soul of humanity. Across the ruined halls of the former council, reconstruction began in a strange, slow way. Human engineers rebuilt the chamber, but they did not restore it to its old glory. The new hall was simpler, built with skylines that let real light down, with seats that were open to many small delegations rather than towering thrones. Earth placed the girl's name there, yes, but also the names of many who had died in the fighting, alien and human alike. The place became a monument to warning and memory, not just triumph. Alien survivors watched the changes with mixed fear and gratitude. Some leaders bent before Earth, their empires broken and their people starving. Others disappeared into the outer systems, nursing their losses and planning in silence. For a while, trade and science moved carefully. Old contacts were tested. New treaties outlined strict rules about children, ambassadors, and shared spaces. The galaxy's network hummed with a new law: harm children, and the response will come. Not all threats went away. Small pirate fleets and hidden cults took advantage of the power vacuum. They attacked supply convoys, stole medicine, and made the job of rebuilding harder. Earth and its allies formed patrols and relief convoys. They learned to build trust as a kind of armor, sending teams not only to police but to repair, feed, and teach. Practical help slowly softened some hostilities. Shared hospitals and joint agricultural projects began to mend what weapons had torn. And in quiet moments, leaders asked themselves the hard question: had the single word that began the war been worth what it cost? Some nights the president walked alone on the steps of her office and thought of the child whose name would live in stone. She had sent the message, she had watched the fleets move, and she had read the reports of ruined worlds. Yet in the low hours, she felt the ache of choices that had no easy answers. The story of what happened passed into mythful versions. Songs told of a single word that changed the stars, of a child's laughter, and of iron planets falling silent. Yet other, truer accounts remained in courtrooms and archives, in testimonies, in the private pages of those who had to sleep with the memories. It became a story told in many voices, not just a tale of wrath, but a long conversation about what justice is across species and suns. Time would tell whether that conversation would bring a safer galaxy or simply a quieter fear. For now, humans kept watch, their eyes turned outward and inward both. They had carved a law into history: do not touch Earth's children. But the echo of the deed would ripple through generations, shaping the rules, the fears, and the small mercies of a galaxy, learning what it costs to answer a single word with thunder. The years that followed were not as silent as humanity had hoped. The fall of the Galaxy Council left a vacuum, and nature abhors emptiness. Where once order, however arrogant and cruel, had ruled, now lawless voices whispered in the dark. In the broken sectors of space, old enemies of the Council crawled out of hiding. Pirate clans grew bold, striking supply lines and vanishing into nebulae. Some alien warlords declared themselves sovereign rulers, raising banners over dying worlds. They had no grand fleets, no disciplined armies, but their chaos spread like infection. Yet the most dangerous resistance did not rise from aliens. It rose from within humanity itself. They called themselves the Echoes of Mercy. At first, they were only scholars, philosophers, and former soldiers who had seen too much. They met in quiet halls, speaking of what had been done in the council chamber, of executions without trial. Their voices were low, their arguments careful, but their words began to spread. They asked a question that made governments uneasy. If one child's death demanded an empire's execution, what would happen when the next injustice came? Who would judge the judges? The Earth government called the Echoes misguided, dangerous traitors to the sacrifice of billions. Security forces raided their gatherings, seized their recordings, silenced their leaders. But every time one was silenced, two more rose. Their message traveled on hidden networks, burned into the walls of cities, whispered by young recruits in barracks. Meanwhile, on the edges of human-controlled space, small colonies grew restless. They had fought and bled in the war, but now they felt ruled from Earth with the same iron weight once used by the Council. Taxes, fleet conscription, and strict new laws kept them bound. For the first time, some colonies began to question whether Earth had freed them, or simply replaced one master with another. The galaxy watched closely. Some alien worlds cheered quietly at the Echo's defiance, hoping humanity might fracture. Others feared it, for if humans could tear down the Council, what could stop them from tearing down themselves? The military stayed sharp, fleets patrolling the stars with banners high. But even among officers, whispers began. Some agreed with the Echoes in secret, believing humanity must not become the very empire they destroyed. Others hardened further, arguing only fear would keep the galaxy from daring to rise again. One night, a message appeared across a dozen human networks at once. It bore no origin, no signature, only words. We were not born to be tyrants. We were not forged to rule with silence and fire. Remember the child, yes, but remember also who we are. If mercy dies, then so does humanity. The words spread faster than the government could erase them. The Echoes had spoken openly at last. Earth's leaders stood in silence, watching the storm they could no longer contain. They had won the war against the Council, but a new conflict was growing, one that would not be fought in the stars, but in the hearts of their own people. The galaxy had feared humanity's silence once. Now it began to fear humanity's voice.